Hey everyone, my name is Jazz, and for today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to do well consistently in the early game. Meaning, you should be able to win fights a lot more and die a lot less off spawn. I've had a lot of people asking me about this video, so let's get right into it. Awareness is probably the most important aspect of the early game. When I talk about awareness, I'm talking about being aware of every little thing happening both in the game you're playing, as well as patterns over the course of a lot of games. Most things happening in the early game have already happened in previous games. Fights usually break out in the same area, you can predict how much materials someone will have, and there might be a dominant high ground position. All you need to do is learn from those previous games to know how you should play in your next game. I'll quickly give two examples. The first pattern that I noticed when landing here is that when I pick up a weapon from the side of the building and an opponent picks up a weapon on top, they will almost always immediately drop down. So I should pick up the weapon and use this plant for cover in case they drop down. This way, I have a right hand peek in our aim duel. The next thing I notice is that I'll basically always be able to get to the slurp truck faster than an opponent who lands at this house, unless they don't farm or if they use mobility. If they get to it really fast, then I know all I have to do is spray a lot with my AR because they won't have a lot of materials, and we're fighting in open space. Knowing these kinds of things makes my early game a lot easier. Now, let's move on to the second example. I have recently been landing craggy as well. When I first started landing craggy, I landed at this building. My thought process was that it has 2 chest spawns and I can instantly get max wood because of the pellets there. So I thought it was a good spot to go for to quickly get some loot and then be ready to fight. This, however, is not how it went in real games at all. Whenever I would land here, I would basically get pushed straight away from multiple sides. So I didn't have time to farm or sometimes even to pop shields. The moment I realized this, I started landing on the left side of Craggy. This way, I would be on the edge and I probably wouldn't get pushed as fast, and I would be able to push whenever I felt ready to push. So basically, once I had shields and a shotgun. The next thing on the list is fights. So how should you fight in the early game? Well, it's all about understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your surroundings. Because with the low material count and usually somewhat weaker weapons, you won't be able to play the same way as in the mid game. When you're fighting in open space, you should focus on wearing down your opponent's materials, because they probably won't have very much. When you're fighting indoors, make sure you know what you're doing when it comes to box fighting. It's also important to understand your loadout. If you get into a fight but don't have a shotgun and have an SMG instead, it's best to find a way to get into their box without them expecting it and being confident about it, instead of playing the same way as you would if you had a shotgun. When you learn what works best in every different situation, you won't only be able to make fights a lot easier for yourself, but it can also shine a light on what you need to work on. For example, if you keep dying inside the same building, you should think to yourself, is my box fighting just not good enough? Or is my awareness at fault for being in the wrong building at the wrong time? The final thing I'm going to be talking about is efficiency. Being efficient with your loot path is the most important thing when you're playing at a high level, either when you're top 200 in a cash cup or playing FNCS. In these lobbies, there are going to be a lot of people alive, and you'll need to rotate early and set yourself up for Storm Surge as quickly as possible. I touched on this topic more deeply in my video about the differences between pro players and average players, but it mainly comes down to knowing how to get your loot and where to farm your materials in a way that you'll be able to rotate and get a good position before other players do, because this will actually set you up to get to endgame consistently. Alright, so to recap, awareness is the most important factor in the early game. If you can pick up on patterns within your drop spot, you'll be able to get advantages over anyone landing there while also understanding the dangers of the drop spot. When you're fighting, you need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your loadout and surroundings. This will make fighting a lot easier. And finally, if you're able to get into those high point lobbies, you need to understand that having an efficient loot path to rotate early is very important. I hope this was useful for you guys, and if you have any questions for me, make sure to either ask them in the comments below or in our Discord, which I'll post a link to in the description below. If you'd like to support me, make sure to use code CoachJazz in the item shop, and as always, I'll talk to you guys soon.